Ciao.
That's enough. Normal view.
Normal view. Normal view. Normal view. Normal view.
Right, I'll record on my side as well.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Just in case.
You people are great, because Allison Sheridan did the same thing yesterday. I said, I'm going to start recording, and she's like, well, I'm going to start recording too. And I told her she was a wonderful person for doing that. And I will tell you now, Mike Rose. I won't even say maybe Mike Rose. I've decided. It turns out it is Mike Rose.
It is. It is I.
I will tell you, Mike Rose, that I am. You are also a great person for doing that. So,
my pleasure.
We had a plan. And our plan was for you to talk about the second most important story for Apple in 2020, because the most important story is the transition to Apple Silicon. And then, of course, Wednesday happened. And I don't think we can talk about the second most important story in Apple for 2020 because Apple set records in the App Store on New Year's Day. And so everything's blown out.
That's probably why.
That's the reason we can't have a normal conversation.
In the future, when archaeologists of the future are unpacking this conversation, they say, why are they talking about Wednesday, December 6th?
January 6th.
Sorry, January 6th, 2021. See, I was going to say December 2020. That's how out of it I am. They're talking about Wednesday, January 6th, 2021. What happened that day? What else could be on their minds other than the complete and total breakdown of the social order?
Okay. All right. So here's the thing, because you don't get to dip into my live show very often. And my live show on Wednesday was just a nightmare, I would say. It was about 8.5 minutes long. I don't know, as you and I record this, whether I put it out as an audio thing or not. And I've gone ahead and taken it down off of YouTube, only because it's not the show. And as you and I sit here and have this conversation, this is also not this show, except I went ahead and did the live thing for the sense of community. I went ahead and did the live thing because I knew that there would be people who would be there. And a lot of what I was talking about on that show is, do you go ahead and act normal? Do you go ahead and try to have, your normal sort of, thing? Or do you just, throw up your hands and say, let's talk about what we really want to talk about? What's your vote?
I mean, I find comfort in, sort of keeping calm and carrying on. And I'm happy to talk about my top story of Apple story of 2020, or second most important Apple story of 2020.
Right.
While acknowledging, as any of us who have done any sort of podcasting or presenting or show type stuff since, March, while acknowledging that everything is, effed up. And there are people who are suffering. There are people who are actively working to alleviate and ameliorate and help resolve that suffering. And there are other people that are deliberately acting to make it worse. And sometimes we're talking about individuals, and sometimes we're talking about the larger society, the body politic, which is mostly what's going on today. But I don't think that precludes us from having a conversation about something else. And I have a personal number 2 most important story and most important Apple story of the year, and I have one that I think is actually more applicable than just me.
All right. Well, let me ask you, first of all, do you agree? Because I am giving everybody the option of saying, I hear you on the Apple Silicon thing, but I disagree. Do you agree that is probably the most important Apple story, or do you agree that that's the most important story for Apple for 2020?
Unquestionably.
Unquestionably.
There's not unquestionably. I mean, you could make an argument from a revenue perspective that the biggest Apple story of any given year is the iPhone.
Sure.
And the fact that in this case the iPhone 12 was able to be produced and rolled out and distributed, manufactured, distributed, and sold in the midst of a pandemic. That's a big deal, and it's a big deal for Apple fiscally and for Apple's continuity as a company. The 4-for-1 stock split is a big deal.
It's happened before, though. They did a 7-for-1 stock split a few years ago.
Right. So all those are big deals, but there's nothing more important strategically to Apple than M1, and it also is the rare. I mean, rare anywhere, rare from a product perspective, rare from an Apple perspective, rare from a technology perspective. It's the extremely unusual, black diamond of a product launch where it absolutely positively did what it said on the box, like shockingly so. And to have people really outside the ecosystem, outside the Apple community, come in and take a look at this and say, wow, this is a game changer. This is something that is going to upset the established order when it comes to microprocessors and computing, desktop computing in general. This is going to change everything. And they aren't the usual people who are saying it. There are people who are like normally not explicitly not saying about anything Apple does. So for me, yes, I will not put myself in the contrarian camp on that. The M1 was definitely the biggest story of the year.
Okay, so then tell me do you want to do your personal one or your overall one?
I'll do my personal one.
Okay.
So as of December 31st, there was an announcement from the Metropolitan Transit Authority, New York's Metropolitan Transit Authority, which runs the subways and commuter railroads and other transit operations in New York City, and has had its own challenges during the pandemic. Has dropped, for those not in the New York area, New York subway famously has run 24/7 or normally runs 24/7, and since I want to say April or May, has dropped back to close the entire system between 1 and 5 a.m. to allow for sanitizing and cleaning, which has never really happened before. And budgets are in disarray, and it's very not so good for the transit authority. But one thing that is good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I saw a story the other day that said that car ownership in New York City is up, which I'm like, where are they going to put them? But I understand it at the same time, because who wants to sit next to that guy? That guy being anybody who's not somebody who lives in your house.
Right. Who wants to breathe that guy's air? But I mean, they're clean and they're being well. It's still stressful, but it's stressful. It's always stressful to ride the subway. It's a normal kind of stress. Car ownership is going up. At the same time, parking spaces are going down because outdoor dining is now permanently allowed in the city. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is that as of the 31st of December, New York City, the subways in New York City and the Metropolitan Transit Authority have finished rolling out contactless payments.
Yes.
Using the One Metro New York, or the Omni system. And for me, as a sometime commuter, formerly daily commuter, now sometime commuter, this is huge. Like, this is technology intersecting with my life in a new way, because I no longer have to think about where my freaking Metro card is. And it has subtracted aggravation from my life. In fact, having not commuted for months, from March through June probably, or July, where I didn't really take the train into Manhattan at all, and then starting to go in the fall more often, going once or twice a week. Having that ability to swipe my watch at the turnstile, holy crap. Mm-hmm. It's so much better. Like, it's so much better than having this thing that you lose track of, and also you have no visibility on a Metro card unless you have an unlimited or one that you're getting through your workplace, which is refilling unlimited. You have no visibility to how much money's on there until you go and you try it at the turnstile or you try it at a reader. So it's very easy to arrive in a hurry, swipe your card, and be told you don't have enough, you have insufficient money to pay the fare. That doesn't happen with Apple Pay. And so for me, while certainly one could do this with other contactless payment systems, for me, the Apple story is that one of the things I depend on has joined the 21st century and enabled Apple Pay for the subway, which is a big deal, again, for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll tell you something that while people who live in the city, think the world ends outside the 5 boroughs, you're a smart enough guy. I mean, you know that's the biggest story for you, but that's not the biggest story. Right. What would you say is the second biggest story overall? I mean, again, with the assumption that Apple Silicon is tops.
So the biggest story after Apple Silicon for me is kind of, I feel like this is also kind of out of left field, but I'm going to go with the introduction of Apple One.
Interesting.
Yeah, because this represents the, if Apple was a Marvel Cinematic Universe film, this is the beginning of Phase 3. This is the explicit transformation into a services company, where each of these offerings, has different strengths and different sort of stickiness with the audience. And I would not be the person who subscribed to Apple Arcade ordinarily. I think since I've been an Apple One subscriber, I've played one game. It was good. It was a golf game. It was fun, but I'm not a handheld gamer that much. So it was never going to get me over the line into investing that monthly fee. But with Apple One, I already had Apple Music. I already had Apple TV Plus. I already certainly had iCloud, and I already had Apple News Plus. So bundling them together, saving money, and getting Apple Arcade and Fitness Plus, which is daunting, but I imagine that being ready for the new year is huge, and that they're looking at their daily average users and seeing that climb up in the days after New Year's. Knowing that there is this structure for it. And it works with family sharing, and it works with all the stuff you already have, really says to me, okay, this is a services company in full bloom, in its maturity, because it was inarguable that paying a monthly fee for iCloud, for iTunes Match and iCloud and Apple Music and Apple TV Plus, it doesn't make sense. Like there comes a point where that set of relationships, even if you're all managing it through iTunes subscriptions, doesn't make sense. This makes more sense. You
mentioned iTunes Match. Actually, I wish they would go ahead and throw that in, because that's still something that's being paid for separately. And it's $25 a year, but it's still $25 a year. And if I'm already giving you all that other stuff, I don't even know if it's doing anything anymore. But I read some article recently that said, yes, I'm still using iTunes Match because I don't understand how it works anymore, but I'm afraid that if I cancel it, then I'm going to lose all my music. And I'm like, yeah, that's the same reason I've got it now, because I don't know.
That's the same reason I have it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know what it did, which was to
kill your actually good albums for whatever they replaced them with.
Yeah, some of those glitches were hilarious. I mean, to take your CD ripped music wherever it came from, it was sort of amnesty. It was like, well, I don't care where you got that. If you have it and we can match it, we'll give you the AAC 256 version. However, said version is DRM'd, and it could be taken out from under you. So for me, $25, and I imagine the reason it's not part of Apple One is because it's a legacy license with ASCAP and BMI and the labels. But the fact that it's there, I feel like now with Apple Music, it's pointless. Like, why do I care? With the possible exception of like rarities or live albums or other stuff, which I had and then wanted to soup up, wanted to glam up. Then I want that. But I think many of us are in this situation of like, how can I and actually I think going back, I think it was Chris Breen, maybe Jason Snell, maybe Chris Breen, but years ago wrote it was Snell, I think, like a pretty sophisticated guide to how do you manage and sort and search your Apple, like create smart playlists for your stuff that is not yet in Apple Music but is eligible or has been iTunes matchified. Like there was a process you go through and you're like, okay, I'm going to flag these and send them to iTunes Match to be checked, and then I'll get the full version. So it should be possible to run that in reverse, to take the miles off the Porsche, and figure out if you kept your original files. But part of it is just like, who wants the aggravation? Like, it is 5 lattes worth of not having to think about it to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Let me ask you one other question really quickly, because when you talk about this being Apple as a services company in full bloom,
Yes.
Nobody's happy with that. And I shouldn't say nobody's happy with that, but analysts and investors, I'm thinking specifically about Tony Sacconaghi and Gene Munster, are both calling for Apple to be a hardware as a service company. They're calling for a subscription service where you get your phone, you get your Mac, you get your Apple TV, whatever other hardware they have, Apple Watch maybe. I think Virgin Mobile is actually doing a $100 plan that has something like that, plus a certain amount of data and calls and all that. In the UK, do you see Apple eventually doing hardware as a service, or do you see Apple continuing to sell these services? And, if T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, whomever wants to offer Apple's hardware as a service, they'll be happy to play with them, but they're fine just doing the server farms.
I don't know. I mean, the hardware as a service with the sort of, they're already doing sort of phone subscriptions. The carriers are already doing that sort of, get the latest model every year approach. I don't see a business barrier to it. I mean, maybe I'm not thinking about it deeply enough to see what the problem is, but I think they might.
All right, I gotta go back and watch TV now.
Okay, thank you for this. Thank you for a few minutes of escapism. It was delightful not to be thinking about the news until I saw the notification that Stephanie Grisham, the First Lady's chief of staff, has resigned in protest.
Oh, and
yes.
Well, you see, now I gotta go. Now I really have to go watch TV because you say in protest, and I'm like, of what? Because it could be so much stuff.